What if the very thing you've been running from your entire life is actually the doorway to the freedom you've been searching for? What if the pain you've been numbing, avoiding, distracting yourself from with food, screens, busyness, relationships, what if that pain isn't your enemy at all? What if it's an invitation? This is chapter 11 of The Untethered Soul by Michael A. Singer, and it's titled Pain, the Price of Freedom. And that title alone stopped me cold the first time I read it. Because most of us have been taught, implicitly or explicitly, that the goal of a good life is to minimize pain, to engineer comfort, to stay safe. But Singer turns that completely upside down. In this chapter, he makes the case that your avoidance of pain isn't protecting you, it's imprisoning you. Every time you close yourself off to avoid feeling something difficult, you don't actually escape it. You carry it. It builds up inside you. And over time, those accumulated layers of unfelt pain become the very walls that keep you from living fully. So if you've ever wondered why you feel stuck, emotionally, spiritually in your relationships, this chapter might hold the answer you weren't expecting. Let's get into it. Singer opens this chapter with a truth that sounds simple but cuts deep. Pain is not a mistake. It's not a sign that something has gone wrong with your life. It is a natural, inevitable part of being a conscious being who is genuinely engaged with the world. When you love someone, you risk loss. When you care about something, you risk disappointment. When you open yourself to life, really open yourself, things will happen that hurt. Things will happen that hurt. That's the design. But here's the distinction Singer draws that changes everything. There's a difference between pain and suffering. Pain is what happens to you. Suffering is what happens when you resist pain, when you refuse to let it move through you, when you grip it tightly and replay it and build your identity around it. Think about a time something painful happened, a rejection, a loss, a failure. The initial sting of that moment was pain. But how long did you carry it afterward? How many times did you replay the conversation, rerun the scenario, relive the feeling? That prolonged experience, that's suffering. And suffering, Singer argues, is optional. Not because pain is avoidable, but because clinging to it is a choice, even if it doesn't always feel like one. The invitation here isn't to become numb or indifferent to life. It's actually the opposite. It's to be so fully present with what arises, including pain, that you stop prolonging it through resistance. Life is asking you to feel, not to manage, and that distinction is the beginning of everything in this chapter. Once Singer establishes that pain is inevitable, he turns to something even more important, what we do in response to it. And what most of us do, he says, is close. We close our hearts. We pull inward. We build walls. And those walls feel like protection. They feel like wisdom. Like we've finally learned our lesson. Like we're being smart about who we let in, what we invest in, how vulnerable we allow ourselves to be. But Singer is very clear. Those walls don't keep pain out. They keep you in. When your heart is closed, you're not actually safe. You're just cut off. Cut off from genuine connection, from spontaneous joy, from the full texture of being alive. You walk through life behind glass, able to see everything, but unable to truly touch it or be touched by it. And the cruel irony is that the more tightly you protect yourself from pain, the more you have to manage. Because life keeps happening. New things come along that threaten to penetrate your defenses. A beautiful moment that reminds you of what you've lost. A person who gets too close. An opportunity that scares you because it matters. And every time something approaches the walls you've built, you spend enormous energy keeping it out. Singer describes this as an exhausting way to live. And it is. Because the energy you pour into emotional self-protection is energy you're not putting into actually living. The fear of pain, left unchecked, becomes its own kind of suffering, a low-grade, chronic constriction that follows you everywhere. And the only real solution is not better walls, it's the willingness to open. This is where Singer gets to the heart of what pain, the price of freedom, actually means. Freedom, real freedom, not the freedom of distraction or numbness, has a cost. And that cost is your willingness to feel whatever arises without running from it. This might sound straightforward, but Singer is asking something radical here. He's not saying tolerate pain. He's not saying push through it stoically. He's saying welcome it. Don't make it wrong. Don't immediately reach for something to make it stop. Sit with it. Let it be there. Let it speak. Because when you choose to feel pain rather than flee from it, something remarkable happens. You discover that you are bigger than the pain. The pain is an experience arising within you. It is not you. And in that space of awareness, you're no longer at the mercy of it. Singer uses the analogy of a thorn. Imagine you have a thorn in your arm. You have two choices. You can remove it, or you can build an elaborate structure of behaviors and avoidances designed to make sure nothing ever touches that spot again. Most of us choose the second option without realizing it. We organize our entire emotional lives around protecting our old wounds. But the price of freedom, pain, the price of freedom, is going back to that thorn and actually dealing with it, feeling what you've been avoiding. Not because it's easy, but because the alternative, a life organized around avoidance, is far more costly in the long run. Every moment you choose awareness over escape, you're paying the price, and the return is your life back. One of the most reassuring things Singer says in this chapter is this: pain that is allowed to be felt will pass, on its own, without you having to do anything to it or fix anything about it. This runs completely counter to how most of us relate to difficult emotions. We think that if we feel something fully, grief, humiliation, heartbreak, it will overwhelm us. We'll be swallowed by it. We'll never get out. So we do everything we can to avoid going in. But Singer points out that the emotions we fear most are actually self-completing by nature. They want to move, they arise, they peak, they release, if we let them. The reason they don't release is because we interrupt the process. We resist, we suppress, we distract. And in doing so, we freeze the emotion in place. It doesn't leave, it just goes underground. Think about a wave in the ocean. If you try to hold a wave, you'll exhaust yourself and still get knocked over. But if you let the wave move through, it does, and the water returns to stillness. Your emotions work the same way. The grief you've been holding for years isn't stronger than you. It's just been stopped before it could complete its natural arc. When you move through pain with awareness, not analyzing it, not telling a story about it, just feeling it as sensation, as energy moving through your body, it passes. And on the other side of that passage is a genuine lightness, a spaciousness, something that very closely resembles freedom. This is not a metaphor. This is what the process actually feels like when you trust it. Singer closes this chapter by zooming out to show us the bigger picture of what's actually at stake. Every time you've closed around pain and refused to feel it, you've created what he calls a blockage, a pocket of stored, unprocessed energy that now lives inside you. And these blockages don't just sit there quietly. They shape your behavior. They dictate your reactions. They determine what you can and cannot do freely. You avoid certain conversations because there's a blockage there. You sabotage certain relationships because a blockage gets triggered. You pull back from opportunities because something inside you contracts before you even have a chance to consciously choose. This is what it looks like when your past pain is running your present life. And here's what Singer wants us to understand. You can release these blockages, not through years of excavation or endless processing, but through the simple and deeply difficult act of letting the energy move. Every time something painful surfaces and you choose to stay open instead of closing, you're releasing a little more of what's been stored. You're paying the price, as he puts it, pain, the price of freedom, and getting back a piece of yourself in return. This is cumulative. Over time, as you work through the accumulated layers of stored pain, you become lighter, more responsive and less reactive, more present, more free. Not because life gets easier or stops bringing hard things, but because you've stopped carrying the weight of everything you refuse to feel. That is the promise of this chapter, and it's not a small one. It's the promise of a life that is genuinely, deeply, sustainably yours. Thank you so much for spending part of your day with this chapter. It genuinely means a lot that you're here engaging with this kind of material, because it's not always easy territory to sit with. I'd love to know, where in your own life have you noticed yourself closing down or building walls to avoid feeling something painful, and what has that protection actually cost you? Take a moment and share it in the comments. There's no right answer, and your reflection might be exactly what someone else needed to read today. If this resonated with you, make sure to subscribe. We're working through the Untethered Soul chapter by chapter, and there's a lot more of Singer's wisdom still to come. See you in the next one.